Today on Talking Solutions, we've got Emily Smith in from the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. Welcome back to the show, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me again, Terry.
I know you were on the show previously, but I don't think everybody is aware of what the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation is.
The Nevada Blind Children's Foundation serves children 0 to 22. We're parent support, advocacy, education, recreation. We kind of run the gamut for kids that are blind and visually impaired in our community.
You answered a couple of my questions just by your description of the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation, that it's not exclusively children who are without any vision whatsoever, but those who are also visually impaired.
That's correct. 80% of kids that we see are visually impaired, meaning that they have some kind of sight. It may just be light sensitivity. It may be very good sight, but it's just not correctable to 20/20 with glasses or contacts or surgeries.
You also mentioned working with parents. Let's say it's a newborn and they're made aware of vision that's lacking or a difficulty. Is part of the whole process in working with these parents helping to guide them through something that's freaking them out?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. When you look at our system here in Southern Nevada Early Intervention Systems, they really deal with parents 0 to 2 to 3 years old, right? All of their services are in-home, which means that you have a lot of parents who are getting one-to-one with a visual impairment teacher or therapist or something like that, but they don't get to connect necessarily with other parents who are going through similar things. The nice thing about Nevada Blind Children's Foundation is that we offer taught time programs so that parents can connect with their kids, hand-over-hand education on how to help their kids. So early learning for Braille therapy, sensory. Last time we were here, we talked about the little rooms for the babies and, teaching a child who's visually impaired or blind how to sense around them where their place is in the world and how to find things and feel comfortable. We have kids, especially in the early years, they're afraid to not be held, right? Because the world is dark for them if they're completely blind. And so getting them used to being okay with being in the world without somebody holding them all the time.
Being able to function, spatial understanding, I guess is what I would describe it as.
Exactly. And for the parents, it's just a good opportunity for them to connect. And then we do offer parent support classes. So we'll bring in Clark County School District or Nevada Early Intervention, different services that are available to them, or eye doctors. Our last monthly meeting for our parents, we had an ophthalmologist and an optometrist come in. And really it was like 2 hours of one-on-one to ask all sorts of questions for parents. When you typically go in, you've got your 15, 20 minutes, you get the eye exam, you get what you need, and then you're out. But they could really dig in on, why can't I find this here? Or who's the right doctor for me? This is what my child has. What do you recommend? Things like that are really just invaluable to a parent that is trying to mitigate the system early on.
Well, it's the sort of thing that when you are with that optometrist or that ophthalmologist, or as my case, I've got the advanced level, which is the neuro-ophthalmologist.
Sure. We have lots of kids that need that as well.
When you're in that situation, when you're in the office with your child, stuff is going fast. You're dealing with those test results today or what has to be taken care of right now, and those longer, more general, informative kind of questions. You don't have time for those, and honestly, you don't think of them right then.
Sure. And there's things like how Medicaid works and how the insurance works and things that happen on the backside that doctors normally don't tell you. But when the parents can sit one-on-one and all of a sudden it's like, aha, I get it. Certain things, like I think in the last one they talked about how their doctors keep changing, and the doctors were able to explain how the insurance and the Medicaid works and why that keeps happening to them. It's a frustration for parents, but to understand, and also how to go back and advocate for their child. Once you understand why the system isn't working the way it should be, you're better educated to advocate for something different.
Makes perfect sense. Emily Smith is with us from the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. There has got to be nothing as comforting as having another parent right there with you, or a group of parents who are going through a similar situation.
It's a pretty desolate system right now in Southern Nevada when it comes to having a child who's visually impaired. We're one of the few states that don't have a school for the blind. When you look at the healthcare system, it's just like everything else with the healthcare system. They say if you get sick, you get on a plane. The same thing happens here. And quite frankly, a lot of our toddlers, we're losing them to other states because their eye doctor will tell them flat out, if you want the best care for your child, from education to healthcare to everything across the board, you need to move away. So they're moving to places like, Denver, Colorado, where they have an anchor center for the blind, and Phoenix, where they have the foundation for the blind, and they have those resources and they have top-notch doctors that can support. That's not to say that we don't. We've got some great doctors here, but some things that are specialized, we're still sending our kids out of state for to get the care that they need.
Wow, I've heard of that in so many different medical situations, not just children who are blind or visually impaired, but any kind of a medical situation. You're always hearing, well, to get my procedure, I went to LA, I went elsewhere.
Right.
And Nevada people diss us a lot.
Right.
I think we still have some really good providers. It's just tight. I don't think we have a lot of them.
We do. We have good providers. And one of the things that the foundation is really working towards is in the next 18 months to 2 years, providing a preschool for the visually impaired. We want to start early with early education and start to build that infrastructure. And when we talk to our parents that we're currently seeing, a lot of what they're saying is, that would be amazing. I was just getting ready to move. So they want to stay in town. They want to stay with their families. But when you look at that early education piece and daycare, the reality in Southern Nevada right now is that most families, they're either a single family or if there's two parents in the family, they're both working. So what do you do with your child early on? If you've given birth to a child that's visually impaired or blind and can't go to a regular preschool, Nevada early intervention is great, but they're in-home services for 2 hours once a week or whatever that child needs. But it's certainly not full-time daycare that somebody can go out and get a job and look after their family. And so these families are relying on, if they have local family here, somebody to babysit for them. But again, not people that are necessarily educated on how to advance their child. And it's so critical in that early learning for them to gain the skills that they need so that when they get into school, they can be successful.
Stopping to think about it, putting a child into daycare, if you had a child who was blind or visually impaired, I guess you couldn't go to this preschool right next door to us and say, hey, can I set my kid up for preschool?
Right. Not everybody's able to provide the services and the resources, the Braille books, the large print books, the Braille toys, even something as simple as a kickball. Everything that we have at the center, the kickball jingles so the kids can hear it. The beep and egg hunt for Easter, all of the eggs beep. How do you manage that in a sighted world when a typical Easter egg hunt, you go out and you're looking for the eggs? It's different for our kids. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to bring to the table sooner rather than later to help stop the bleed of losing. Because the reality is this, the people that can afford to move are going to move. The people who can't afford to move are stuck in the system. So you're talking about people who can't then go to work. So what are they going to do? They're going to be living off the government. They're going to have to take welfare or some kind of subsidy to stay home with their child. Their child's going to end up on the same thing. And if they don't get that early education, which basically, when you think about it, our kids have to learn before they can learn how to learn, right? They say with reading, up until grade 3, you're learning to read. And then grade 3, you're reading to learn. Take a step back for a visually impaired child. Now you're learning how to set up to be able to learn how to read. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's adding a big extra step before you can go forward like other kids.
And it's so much harder, especially with the Braille system. Not an easy system. There's a certain configuration for each letter of the alphabet, but then once you get to a certain level, it's contracted. So one word, as we would spell it, they have to learn how to spell it like we do. Then they also have to learn what the contracted version of that is. All of that has to happen as they're also learning how to read and then transitioning into reading to learn. That's how our kids get behind in their early years, and that's why it's so critical for early intervention there.
Wow. You're talking about with the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. Emily Smith, the executive director, is with us today on Talking Solutions, and you're hopeful that you're going to be able to get some kind of a preschool for visually impaired and blind children.
We are. That's our plan. We currently have a number of people out there looking for the right location for us right now, and as soon as we find the location, we're going to be moving on that plan.
And a lot of things would need to be part of this early education experience for these kids with these special visual difficulties. Mm-hmm. Even, like you said, the balls that have the jingles in them so that you hear the bells, all of the different tactile things that you'd need, Braille and large print books, and all these different offerings that most preschools would not even have.
Absolutely.
So probably funds for that endeavor.
It's not cheap. I got to tell you, I saw a statistic on it, and I think they said something like the average child in the Clark County School District, it costs like $8,000 or $9,000 a year to educate them. And for our kids, it's somewhere closer to like $46,000 or something per child.
That's not double. So, that's way, way more.
Yeah. And it comes down to, again, our kids, and we're not just talking about visual impairment. So many of our kids, 80-20, probably 80% of them are visually impaired, 20% are blind. Then when you look at other factors like autism, cerebral palsy, all of these other attention deficit disorders, our kids tend to have more of those other issues. So now you're talking about therapies and sensory and counseling. Counseling when you're just trying to come to terms, because a lot of times kids, especially if they've lost their sight after, like we have a couple young kids that maybe around 6, they started to lose their sight. Now they're almost completely blind. And for a while there's a transition where they're thinking, maybe I'll get it back. Something's going to happen. This can't be permanent. And then as it starts to sink in, this is for real. This is permanent. There's a lot of counseling and there's a lot of other pieces that need to be offered to that child just to help to cope with that. That's why the cost is so much higher, because we're not just dealing with their visual impairment, we're dealing with everything else too.
Pretty devastating when it sinks in that the vision is not coming back.
Yeah. And oddly enough, when you come to our center and you meet our kids, the visual impairment is probably the least debilitating thing for them. And I know that sounds really weird, but I know when I first took the job and I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I thought that our kids would be more, I don't want to say sad about it, but that it would be a thing for them.
More of a stumbling block than you encountered.
Yeah, or that they would talk about it. And when you come into the center and you see the kids, they're just kids, right? Like they're just running around and doing what they do and interacting. And the great thing about the center is we have the right facility for them to do that. Typical boys out on the playground during recess, they're playing football or they're kicking a ball around and all that. And our kids can't necessarily participate in that. But when they get to our center, the boys are just boys. They're on the coasters or they're playing Power Showdown, a game specifically designed for them. And so you take out that what they're missing piece and you start to realize that they're just kids. And at the end of the day, we deal with a lot of the same things that every other group of kids deal with. Food insecurity, sending backpacks full of food home with our kids, transportation issues, financial issues in single parent homes. And all of those pieces play a part in that. And you realize pretty soon that the visual impairment, it's such a big piece, but it's not the only piece, right? You got to address comprehensively for each one of these kids.
It's got to be hard for the parents too, because they have a child that has a visual impairment or dealing with complete blindness.
Right.
How many of the kids with Nevada Blind Children's Foundation, did you say it was 80-20? 80 with the visual impairment, but 20 totally non-sighted?
Yeah, I would say about that.
Anytime a parent is dealing with one of these sets of circumstances with their kid, there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. There's the extra things you need to do for that child. There's things the parents themselves have to deal with. And the chance through the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation to be able to empathize and share those stories and those feelings with other parents has got to be invaluable. But there's a lot of costs involved in taking care of a child who has those special needs.
Absolutely. And they do get state funding and federal funding, and that definitely helps, but it doesn't really completely cover. And so when you look at a typical Braille machine, let's say for a blind child or a blind teen, you could pay upwards of $6,000 just for that one machine. And then you add on any other pieces that they need. And especially when it comes to therapies, when you have a child who's born prematurely, you see a lot more autism, you've got the visual impairment, behavior issues. So now you're talking about behavior therapists, and there could be occupational or physical therapy needed as well. And what we hear from our parents is it becomes a driving experience, driving from this appointment to that appointment to the next appointment, trying to get all of the things that they need done for their child, trying to better their child. That's one of the things that when we really looked in this last year, we looked at our model of service and thought, how can we bring all of these services to one point so that a family can be a family, they can enjoy their time together, and their kids could get all of the resources that they need in one area. And so our long-term goal is to be able to bring those pieces together. We're partnering with Toro University right now. They're sending us some of their students as volunteers, not for therapy, but for other volunteer opportunities. They're going to start looking at things like how could we build out our therapy program and what could that look like, with the eventual idea that we would have a top-notch therapy room and a sensory room for the kids so that they could come for preschool. They could see their therapists at the same time, they come out for an hour and do their hour of therapy. They could get all of the things. We could bring in eye doctors and have a track there so that we could do some initial screenings and things like that for kids, so that we'd be a comprehensive model that not only looks at their special needs, but also looks at some of those things. We partner with 3 Square for the food insecure families and stuff like that. We're really trying to think as a comprehensive model, one service where everybody's talking to each other, where the doctor can talk to the teacher, can talk to the therapist. Anybody who goes to doctors here, that your regular intern doctor doesn't talk to a back doctor, or if you have allergies or whatever, and they're not all talking to each other. And I don't see how you can get the best care that way. So that's our long-term vision, bring everything under one roof, the best of everything that we can, and let parents be able to participate as a family.
More of a comprehensive center to take care of those multiple needs.
Right, absolutely.
To save parents and kids all of these different stops. They're still trying to work full time. And in a lot of cases, I'm sure they also have other children in the household who also need attention.
That's correct.
And need to understand that the reason why their sibling who has visual impairment is getting a lot of attention because it's necessary, but that doesn't mean they're forgetting the other kids in the family.
Sure. And we provide programs that serve the sighted siblings as well. We try to do a mix. We have family programs like the Easter egg hunt, or we do a holiday party where it's really for the whole family to enjoy the day together. But then once a month, we'll do a Fun Friday for the kids and their sighted siblings. And it's dinner, and we do a movie that's in audio description, and we'll have activities, and it's typically themed. So it'll be like pirate night, and the kids will get all dressed up. And yeah, and it's just, it's a good time, but it's 4 hours on a Friday night, which also works out well for mom and dad to kind of get out and get a little date in. So we try to be really thoughtful about the programming and the services that we're offering so that, like I said, we can't just serve our kids. We have to look at the family. We've helped people that needed to get a job. Whatever it takes, we want to make sure that we're looking at the family unit as a whole and figuring out how we can do the best. Because if the family unit's doing well, the siblings, if everybody's there as that support net for our kids, the better they're going to be.
Emily Smith is with us, Executive Director of the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. As you go through and you explain all these different facets of what you do, it's quite obvious that these are pricey things. And we want to shine a light on the fundraising event that you've got coming up that I'm sure could help with some of this, the Ladybug Ball.
It's so much fun. It's probably too much fun, but Ladybug Ball, held annually in April. It's coming up April 30th. It starts at 6 p.m. with hosted cocktails and drinks. And we're doing something new this year where we have mixologists that are going to be doing different flavored cocktails, and each of their booths will have a sensory experience. We'd like our guests to kind of consider what it's like to be blind and taking part in their other senses, like sense of smell. And so whatever the mixologist comes up with, that booth will smell like that. So if it's orange flavored cocktail, really playing on your other senses. Silent auction time, a hosted cocktail, very fun part of the evening. And then we move into a full gourmet dinner by different chefs around town. And then entertainment. We're having a Lon Bronson band this year. There's dancing. And then we have a hosted VIP party. We get around the piano and start singing some songs. And by that point, everybody, I think, has probably had a little bit to drink. But
well, it's part of the sensory experience.
It's part of the sensory experience, but it's a fun crowd. Everybody just really has a good time. And everybody's there for the charity. Everybody's very supportive, but it's not your typical black tie, rubber chicken dinner kind of thing. It's all very upscale, but just a really fun time.
Where's it going to be held?
We're at the Red Rock. And we also, if anybody's interested in staying because they don't want to drink and drive, which I would recommend, we have deals on rooms as well. And a lot of people take up on that and get a room for the night and make a whole evening out of it.
Where would we find information on tickets? April 30th, you said, is the date.
April 30th, 6 p.m., and you can find that on our website. It's nvblindchildren.org.
Well, Nevada is one of the few states that does not have a school for the blind. So the services that you provide with the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation are even more important than they would be otherwise.
Sure. We're the only nonprofit that's really geared for blind and visually impaired children. When you look at statistics on blind and visually impaired people in general, I think I saw something that's like 70% of blind adults do not work. And the cost that was associated with that was something like $1 million per person. That's not working, not paying taxes, getting Social Security, all of that.
Disability.
Yeah. How can we change that fact? If there was one big thing that our organization could do, it seems to me like that would be the goal. Because you can look at the cost associated, but at the end of the day, you look at the life of that person. What's the value for them to be sitting at home? Where's their purpose? Nobody wants to be sitting at home, but we're such a sighted world that it's hard for us to see how they fit into our world. If I asked you right now, what jobs do you think visually impaired people should be doing? It probably would be very hard. Where do they fit? Because everything feels so sighted. And it's just not the case. There's opportunity across the board. And I think that one of the things that we can do, and it starts again with that early education, getting kids prepared to have a successful life. Part of that is being self-sufficient. And it's one thing to teach somebody how to be able to get around town and how to be able to read and how to be able to access the websites and all of that kind of stuff. But it's another thing to teach them how to have a fulfilled life and how they can give back to other people.
Quality of life is huge. But what about with technology? Emily, there are so many things in our world. All of us have our smartphones and our tablets and our computers and everything else where I can talk to Cortana or Siri or I can search with my voice on Google. Technology, I'm thinking it has to be beneficial in working with all these kids.
Absolutely. The Apple products with the voice voice. They're amazing. And one of the things that we've done at the center is working is so important. I want to be a first place of employment. And so in the past year, we've hired 6 people who were visually impaired and or blind. They're fantastic. And most of them get around with an iPhone. They get it on the voiceover and then they put it on like 6X. I can't even understand what their iPhone is saying, but they're so used to it. I mean, they pick it up like that. But really with an iPhone, they get their paratransit bus and they know when the bus is there and they get all of their text messages and all that kind of stuff too. So it's amazing what technology can do for you today. I think one of the drawbacks to having everything so accessible like that it will just read it to you is that there may not be as much focus on learning how to read Braille and really learning how to read, period. That to me is a critical thing that I think that we can never lose sight of. Just like you and I, we can get an audiobook, but we still have to know how to read. That's the bottom line. And I would just stress that as great as technology can be, that fundamental has to be there.
I want that technology phase to be part of the employment picture down the road. I want the kids who come through the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation to be well-educated, have had all the support from you guys as they were growing up, and then when they enter the working world, to be these tech wizards. That's what I'm thinking you're going to have.
We have a couple already. It was funny. At the last Ladybug Ball, we have a group of ambassadors. We call them our ambassadors, and they're our kids that come to the center on a regular basis, and they come to the ball as well. They get a table, and one of the young men went over to thank the donor who had paid for the table, and she was talking about she had just upgraded from flip phone to iPhone. And this young guy who has no sight at all, he's a whiz. He actually has his own YouTube channel, and he does all sorts of tech stuff on there, teaching other people how to utilize voiceover and everything. And it was just so funny because he picked up her iPhone. He's like, you don't have this on, and you got to do this, and you're not secure. You know, anybody can find you. And he's fixing it. He just had it up to his ear. It was very loud in the room, and he just sticks the phone up to his ear. And she was overblown by this kid who no sight or anything, but he's a tech whiz, and he's going to do great things in life because it doesn't stop him. That's just a testament to what our kids can do. There's no stopping them.
I got to believe that this woman who was at your Ladybug Ball last year and one of the kids with the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation picks up her iPhone and starts fixing everything for her and setting it all up. She has got to be a huge fan of everything you do now.
She was to begin with. She was one of our founding members for the organization, and she's been with us for a long time and just fantastic supporter of everything that we do. We have a lot of great supporters in town. It's amazing how generous everybody can be. Even the event coming up, MGM's been a supporter of us, and Terry Fader's a sponsor for our event coming up. I mean, there's just a lot of great people who step up, and our board of directors, they're so focused on the bottom line and the kids and making sure that it's good for the kids. You can't ask for more than that.
The tickets for Ladybug Ball on April 30th.
Tickets start at $300 a piece. That covers the whole night and the open bar and too much food and too much of a good time, but you can never get enough, right?
And that sensory drink experience with the mixologist. Yeah, it sounds like you got a bunch of things going on that night.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. A lot of great entertainment. If you like to dance and party and have a good time, this is definitely your crowd.
Lon Bronson Band is so good.
Yeah, they're fun. Last year we had Frankie Marino and people were still on the dance floor. They didn't want to end, but like I said, I think last year the VIP party ended at like 2 a.m. or something like that. So we go late and we have a good time, and it's all for the kids.
That's what it's all about. The Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. I want to see you be able to get that preschool open. I think that's going to be amazing.
We're really excited about it. It really hits home when you start talking to some of these parents that could benefit today, and you realize that you're 6-8 months away from losing them in our local economy. And like I said, when you look at that, the people who can afford to move are going to move. And what does that mean for the brain drain here? We need to be a community that is responsive and make sure that they're looking after their families here. That's part of what we want to do, and that's part of why we're trying to bring the community together to get this preschool up and running.
And for the kids themselves, I don't want to ever underestimate, they may be visually impaired or possibly have no vision whatsoever, but to underestimate the value they can offer our community and the smarts, and I just know tech and things like that are going to play right into their wheelhouse. I know that they're going to be able to be really high-achieving individuals with the proper instruction.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And let's put it back to Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles. I mean, think about the people that you already know.
Ronnie Milsap.
Right, exactly.
I know I have the music side, having been a DJ.
Yes, nothing stopped them. And Stevie Wonder, he was just on the award show, and he was laughing because, you know, he could read Braille, and he was the only guy that could read
At
the card.
Grammys, they gave him the envelope, and it's in Braille, and he read the winner.
Right.
It was literally at his fingertips.
He's a great advocate for making sure things are accessible to everybody, and that's all we're asking for our kids.
Well, those of us who are lucky enough to have our vision vision, at least most of it. We can thank our lucky stars and realize that even for those who have impaired vision or no vision whatsoever, that does not mean the end of the road. And that's not the way these kids and these parents and these families think.
That's right. We have 6 staff. We've had day camp counselors, some of our Braille tutors, which is a great opportunity for our kids because they get to see. What's important to me is that they see other blind and visually impaired people that are just like them functioning and working in the world. And my hope is, too, that as a place of first employment, we start with our day camp and we offer a counselor and training for our kids up to 15. And then after 16, 18, we'll start to hire them as day camp counselors to give them that first job, to hold them accountable, just like everybody else. You got to get to work on time. And then my hope is that they get some good skills behind them. They get a resume built up behind them, and then they move on to other bigger, better things. But I want to make sure that they have those opportunities. And if we can't do it, I can't expect somebody else to do it. So we'll be the first place to hire.
Well, you can do it.
That's right.
The Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. You help kids and their families from birth to about age 22.
That's correct.
To get these kids provided with everything they need educationally and otherwise, and their families. And then when they are young adults, out and functioning in the world, productive members of our community. It can be done. We just need to help out a little bit.
It can be. A few months after I started with the organization, I was in a meeting and we were talking about one of the young men that comes into our center. And I was talking with a representative from the school district and UNLV. And I was just saying, when I talk to this young man about what he wants to do when he grows up, his answer was, I want to ride the bus around. If you asked any other 9-year-old little boy what you want to do, they're going to be like astronaut, fire, police chief, whatever. But they have a vision for what their future looks like. And as we talked about him, I was saying, how do we get him excited about college and that it's not what if, it's when? How do we get him excited about a career? And it was made really clear to me that he was so far behind in school already at 9 years old that he was going to graduate at 22 with a type 2 diploma, which is basically you came, thank you for coming, but you can't get into college with that. You can't do any kind of post-secondary. It's not really a high school graduation diploma. And I left that meeting so disheartened, thinking, how far off are we that at 9 years old, we've already pegged this kid? And what does that mean for his life? This is a decision at 9 years old that we're saying, here's where it's at. This is what it's going to be. It sucks, but this is the reality. And I got in my car and I just cried my eyes out. And I went, this is it. This is really the whole reason that the organization exists. Because if it's not us filling the gap, I get it. Everybody else is maxed. The school district is maxed on what they can do. And the healthcare system is maxed. And if we can't be that gap filler to bridge the gap and get this kid back on track, there is no other line of defense. And that hit me hard. I'm like tearing up thinking about it now. So I went back to the office and I shared it with the rest of our staff. And I said, here's where we're at. This is a kid that's in the center every day. And we all know and love him. How can this be? And we're so upset. And so we turned that into, what are we doing now? And what else can we do? And over the course of maybe 6-8 months, he was in the center every day, did every one of the classes, twice a week for one-to-one tutoring with a Braille tutor. And in September, I had the opportunity to sit in on his individual education planning with his mom and his teachers and his therapist and everything. And the teacher said to me, he'd gone from, at 9 years old, last year, 4th grade, he was reading on a 1st grade level. He's now in 5th grade, 10 years old, and he's now on a 4th grade reading level.
Catching up really fast.
He's on track to be on 5th grade by the end of this year. And even his teacher, she said, I honestly never seen anything like it. I didn't even think that it could happen so quickly. It's not that she didn't believe he couldn't do it. It was just that it happened so fast. And she said, it's very clear when she had the resources to know she could send home things that his Braille tutor could help with that maybe mom and dad typically can't help with. When she knew that there was that extra support, there was extra communication with the school, extra communication, extra resources given. And in 6 to 8 months, we went from 1st grade reading level to 4th grade reading level. By the end of this year, we'll be on level. I can't tell you how excited I am that we can see results and see them so fast, but it goes to show you what's possible when you focus and say, this is what we're here for. We need to bridge this gap and we need to do it quick.
These kids have unimaginable potential, but they need the right kind of surroundings and support and education. And that's what Nevada Blind Children's Foundation can do. The kids can do a lot. We need to help them do that. We need to give you the tools and resources to help these kids maximize their potential. That's what the Ladybug Ball's all about.
It is. And Nevada Blind Children's Foundation is privately funded through individual and corporate donations. We don't have any government funding right now. Not that we wouldn't like to get some, but everything we do is through the generosity of individuals and corporations here in Southern Nevada. And so we're thrilled with what we're able to do so far, but certainly we've got some big plans and we need people who are visionaries to get behind us and help us take that to the next level.
kids have so much potential, even when they're visually impaired or totally non-sighted.
Right. Investing today, when we look at that 70% non-working, living off the government, we can change that. We invest a little bit today, and that future looks different, and it looks different for our kids. We're giving them a real shot at having a regular life like everybody else.
If you're interested in helping out the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation, attend the Ladybug Ball on April 30th at Red Rock. You've got quite the evening lined up, and the information and tickets, all of that, including information on the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation itself, can be found on the website at nvblindchildren.org.
You got it.
nvblindchildren.org. Emily Smith, thank you so much for coming out. I learned so much about these amazing children when you come and talk to us about the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation.
Thanks for having me, Taryn. I look forward to seeing you at the ball.
Fun! Talking Solutions is a production of the Community Relations Department here at Beasley Media Group, Las Vegas. Get more information on today's topic on our Talking Solutions page on Facebook, where you will also find links and a podcast of today's show. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.